seeing every day there is a news in terms of the attack, the ransomware, the issues, the phishing emails, and a whole lot of things, right? As a part of the kind of daily news. Now, obviously, this has come from the point of view that everything is happening with the information. It's a kind of digital age, right? Where everything is kind of connected into the system, and system is the one which is kind of collecting all the information, data, making the realistic decision for the business, for the individuals, helping them to kind of enrich their life, or otherwise the decision which one is to take it.
Any key recommendations or best practices from a CISO or a cybersecurity leader's perspective?
There is no escape for any of the information security team or cybersecurity team members to kind of not to look at building the robust cybersecurity framework for the organization. Whether I am kind of 1 year old in cybersecurity practice or whether I have 1 year experience, it goes very, very clearly that the robustness one has to demonstrate at every layer from cybersecurity point of view, and therefore demonstrating the understanding about the business nuances and technical part, as well as combining the security. All the three parts is something which is required for anyone and every one of us to demonstrate time and again on a daily basis.
What's the most important quality in a leader that you feel is very, very relevant in today's day and age?
I think I would say two. One is continuous learning, and second goes in hand with that is adaptability.
Hello everyone, you're watching The Mainstream. I'm Simran Shivalkar, your host for today, and we are back with a new episode of our weekly live series. Today we have with us a truly dynamic and a visionary leader from the tech and IT space, Mr. Ashish Shah. Well, he needs no introduction, but I will still take some time and this opportunity to share a few things about Ashish. Ashish is an industry leader with over 25 years of experience in IT strategy, information security, and business continuity management. He has also led strategic initiatives in IT governance, risk management, and disaster recovery, helping multiple organizations build secure and resilient IT environments. His experience spans a lot of regulatory compliance, ISO standards, and enterprise risk management. Today, we are more than excited to know more about his journey, his views and insights on the dynamic cybersecurity landscape and the evolving digital landscape as well. Ashish, thank you once again and welcome to our weekly live series.
Thank you, Simran, for having me here. I would also acknowledge and would like to say thank you to Mainstream team for having me here. It's my privilege to be here with you to share insights, learnings to my all fellow colleagues. I'm hopeful that the time which I will spend with you and we will spend together will be meaningful for all of us, and will be able to contribute in some fashion to their goals or objectives in professional life, and would try to attempt to give some amount of learning from my journey and experience which I have gathered. So
absolutely, Ashish, and I'm very sure that today our viewers will have a lot to take away from this session. That being said, you have over 25 years of experience in the tech space. Perhaps if you could tell our viewers a little bit about your journey, how you started, and how this has shaped your perspective as a leader.
Sure. First thing first, obviously, it's kind of step-by-step journey. One cannot just achieve the kind of final post unless until you kind of strive for it and go one step ahead at a given opportunity, and then move forward with the right kind of attitude and try and achieve and accomplish the interim deliverables, the goals, objective which is set forward for you, and then look at how you kind of move forward with the final objective which you set forward for yourself, right? So actually it started in an era where the computers were kind of just coming into the India. Obviously 30 years back, computers were the word which was just kind of heard by only few select people. What triggered off in my mind was that how does it work? What does it do? How does it operate, and how does it get you the kind of output at that point of time, right? So there was a whole lot of kind of enthusiasm kind of link with that, and that kind of triggered me saying, hey, what is happening in that world? Why people are moving from manual to computer, and what computer essentially is going to be doing a work for us which we can't do, or which will make life easier for us and things like that. So obviously on those time there was nothing like email. There were kind of posts which was going from one department to other department, one function to other function, one location to other location, and things like that. we used to also have kind of memos going from one individual to other individual and things like that, right? So that was the era which we kind of started working on, and that's the time which I'm kind of referring to. Obviously, once you get interested into that in terms of how the computer works individually, then obviously the next era would be in terms of how the computers can work collectively together, right? And make it kind of integrated in such a fashion that there is a kind of communication between the two systems, multiple systems, and then moving into that part of it. So from there, single system era to the multiple systems configurations, connecting to the network kind of thing, and then configuring the database part of it. All of that is something which was kind of done in a kind of first period of life. Obviously, that gave the edge in terms of how one can look at the design part of the network, design part of the database, designing of system, implementation of it, troubleshooting, day-to-day operations, and whole lot of things which we used to look at. Unlike today, where we have Googles of the world to kind of at our disposal to kind of just query something and you have the answer in flips of the seconds, we had a kind of privilege to go through the huge manuals in terms of the installation configurations, making it upright the way the system has to be configured, and then make it functional work for the organizations, right? And obviously a lot of learning in that with respect to even a small misinterpretation about the command is something which will get you the completely different output or not the desired output, right? So those are the worlds which we are kind of seeing through at that point of time, and that's the solid, I would say, rock footing thing which has been worked for us in terms of making the entire journey for me. From there on, obviously, the large scale project executions, etc., which was kind of again the era, purely from IT point of view, technology point of view, and not the era I did not started even thinking about security actually. So I belong to a world where there was completely cybersecurity norm which was implemented, which is no system, no computer, nothing to kind of steal into and nothing to kind of get out of the computer, etc. To the network systems, database configurations, large scale project execution, and then the time where you need to kind of look at security, right from basics to the level of the cybersecurity phenomena which we have today, where you can't think without the cybersecurity going live or going into the business applications or going designing part of it and all of that, right? Having said that, obviously there was a time where the systems were working even without antivirus, and today we can't think of the system not only without antivirus but many much more things which we need to look at from our safeguard protection control establishment point of view. So that's the journey on that. Obviously, as a part of my journey, there were kind of interactions with MNCs, interactions with the global big firms from Western countries' perspective. And that also gave me a point of view with respect to how the data has to be looked at from security point of view and privacy point of view and regulation point of view, where the data cannot travel, the geographies, the regions, etc. And then you need to still deliver the work from the development point of view, right? So that's the career which I've kind of gone through.
Wonderful, and thank you once again for giving us a glimpse about your journey, right from the days of your IT world and then having a shift towards cybersecurity, a leader in the cybersecurity space, Ashish. My next question to you would be, you have seen technology evolve firsthand. You have seen the threat landscape also evolve over a period of time. If you can throw some light on how the risk landscape looks like now compared to what it was a decade ago.
Sure. So obviously all of us are kind of seeing every day there is a news in terms of the attack, the ransomware, the issues, the phishing emails, and a lot of things, right, as a part of the kind of daily news. Now, obviously, this has come from the point of view that everything is happening with the information. It's a kind of digital age, right, where everything is kind of connected into the system, and system is the one which is kind of collecting all the information, data, making the realistic decision for the business, for the individuals, helping them to kind of enrich their life, or otherwise the decision which one has to take it, which essentially brings the point that there is a kind of heavy and huge dependency on the entire ecosystem from technology point of view. And that's the one which is kind of creating a lot of issues with respect to the safeguarding requirement, the protection requirement, and ensuring the data and information is kind of being treated or handled and dealt with in the right way. We are privy to the situation where probably in last 1 year, 30,000 plus vulnerability on technology front which is being identified, which is a volume by itself, which speaks a lot in terms of the way you got to manage the technology. You got to take care of it in the right way. You got to kind of ensure that the technologies which are being used within the setup is something which is rightly configured, rightly deployed, rightly patched, and rightly protected thereby. There are also the points which are coming up from the supply side of it in terms of the supply chain vulnerabilities, which we are now seeing also as one of the points which we wanted to look at. The other point of view is also the part of the ecosystem. We are always dependent on some third-party solutions or third-party vendors or third-party engagements, which we also have to kind of look at from enabling the business point of view. Which means the third party is also to be looked upon from the cybersecurity point of view and ensure that they are also party to your entire security program, which you need to look at. Sometime later, the third party and supply chain vulnerabilities were kind of not there as we kind of progress, make the deep root with respect to how the technology has to be enabled for the business and give an enriched experience to the users. That is the game which is being played by the business and technology team. And it has to be supported from the InfoSec team as well in a right way in terms of the protection which one has to. To give an example to that part of it, obviously artificial intelligence, ML is something which is kind of a buzzword which everyone speaks about. There are organizations which have kind of gone ahead and kind of developed some work around that to enable the business enrichment from customer experience point of view, as well as from cost efficiency, operation efficiency, one has to leverage from this technology. While we do that part of it, obviously there are points from the security point of view which we need to put forward and put into the right defense mechanism from security point of view and then move forward. So and so forth with respect to the ransomware, extortions, etc. And more people are actually looking for, and also supported rightly from the business point of view, is a kind of remote work environment, right? It is no longer a situation where everyone gets into one of the setup and then operates within that setup, and therefore there is a kind of boundary being defined in terms of how the people will work within that environment, right? There is obviously in today's environment with remote work and with cloud adoption, which is kind of increasing day by day, there is a need for completely different perspective in terms of how the data is traveling across the user, across the system, whether it is kind of on-premises, whether in terms of the cloud, whether it's a hybrid model, whether it's a services segment, which is people are kind of looking at. All of this gives a kind of different perspective in terms of how the data is being used by various endpoints within the system, and therefore it has to be looked upon very, very differently with respect to how the protection has to be enabled for this.
Wonderful. Ashish, along the same lines, you also spoke about, there's a reluctancy that we observe in terms of the data being on-premise or on cloud. Any other challenges as a leader, from a leader's perspective, that you can share with us, and any trends that you've observed in the cybersecurity space, perhaps, which is now being a new model for a lot of businesses to adopt?
Sure, certainly it's very interesting aspect of the question which you put forward. So one is obviously with respect to, there is a journey which I talked about, right? So there was a time, an era where there was nothing being done on computer, and today everything is done in computers, right? Now, while we want to take care of from the defense mechanism point of view and security point of view, can everything to be done in a right way from beginning, from day one itself? The answer to that is probably not there, right? Because we obviously want to try it out, certain new technology, see how it fits into the business model, whether it delivers the right kind of business outputs and the deliverables which is required from the perspective of the business nuances, managing the cost at the same time, right? So when you look at all of this part of it, there will be always some kind of gap between the way business wants the technology to be adopted versus how the safeguarding and the guardrails has to be put forward with respect to that particular technology to kind of roll it out. While obviously there are sectors and the organizations which will kind of take a leap ahead in terms of ensuring that right at the design stage everything is being tested, verified, certified from security practices perspective, there are organizations who will kind of look at slightly adopting behind the curve. right? And obviously there are reasons for it in terms of the way the business model is, the way the risk appetite is, the way the sector is, the way consumer expects one to kind of look at and deliver the solution, and of course the business. Having said that, therefore there is a kind of gap from the technology point of view versus how the security would look at to implement, right? And those are the points which will kind of play a very, very final points with respect to how one is to look at these aspects of the question which you raised. Very, very interesting point. So what I would look at from and advice from the perspective is that there are obviously the technology legacies which are available within every setup. While you want to kind of adopt the new technology and probably get into the newer cutting edge solutions, etc., how do you kind of marry both the things together from the control point of view, where as a security person, maybe CISO or maybe the person under him has a kind of right visibility and understanding about how it is deployed, how it is configured, how it is functioning, how it is behaving, and therefore what kind of issues one is to look at from the security standpoint of view, and how good we are there or how bad we could be. That scenario is something which is kind of emerging very, very clearly as a part of it. Apart from that, also the network point of view, there are issues one has to look at from the perspective how the network is designed, and therefore whether it is sufficient enough and good enough from the current security threat landscape point of view, whether it will mitigate all the issues or whether it will not, what kind of risk therefore I have on priority point of view from the network point of view, and whether I need to kind of address something on that side. So for example, microsegmentation is a newer technology which is kind of coming in terms of helping the hand to kind of look at how the network has to be segmented in various categories, and therefore even if there is a kind of bad situation to manage, you are still in a position to kind of control your impact within that particular segment only, and you have kind of controls and levers available for you to kind of play and restrict the kind of impact to the organization. Similarly, from visibility point of view, there were times where the solutions, tools and technologies on security side were kind of deployed in silos to address a specific requirement of the security, and obviously the various team members were having kind of visibility within that particular tool and solution. Probably there was no communication across the team to kind of understand, share, and then look at the kind of complete blueprint or complete understanding about what is happening from the data point of view, from system point of view, or from organization point of view. Everyone was kind of looking into their own issues separately in a siloed manner, and therefore they had a kind of limited visibility. Now I see the team and the security fraternity is kind of looking for a kind of comprehensive visibility across the asset, right? As I was talking about, the attack surface is kind of increased because of the work from home situation scenario, whereas the visibility required to be there from end-to-end point of view, and therefore the team is actually driving themselves with respect to having better visibility across the domain, whether it is on access side of it, whether on network side of it, whether on system side of it, whether on threat management point of view, whether intelligence coming in from the various sources, or what is happening in specific sector, region, geography, or across the globe. All of this is something which is kind of getting combined together to get a kind of view with respect to what is the real risk and the threat one is to kind of immediately look at and focus upon as a priority. I think that's the thing which is coming up. Another interesting phenomena, and rightly again, is coming up is on the data protection front. Worldwide, you see a kind of great and big move happening with respect to how the data has to be not only secure, but how it has to deal with respect to the privacy requirements. And I think those are the ones which are kind of driving from new requirement point of view as well. The third dimension is, as I was speaking some time back, the technology is taking lead and businesses are going more and more in terms of digital, right? Everything has to be available at the finger, everything on mobile device preferred, right? That brings the governance aspect, and therefore the digital governance, which is kind of 3 notch above the traditional governance model, is something which is kind of emerging up, which means not only there has to be a well-defined processes and accountability with respect to how the governance has to be established, but also with respect to how the digital strategy has to be devised, how the policy around that has to be looked at, what kind of standards one has to kind of look at, combining all of this, how the governance is going to be implemented within the organization, which is going to give you not only the complete clarity about the digital assets, but also with respect to the real, near to real time or maybe real time information from security standpoint of in terms of what is going right or what is going wrong.
Fantastic. Ashish, you earlier pointed out about emerging technologies having their own impact on the cybersecurity landscape. We are living in a very interconnected or a digital world, perhaps, wherein every new day there is some or the other technology making a new buzzword or creating new headlines. We already have heard about OpenAI, deepfakes. So, how do you think these technologies are having or posing new risk or making the risk landscape even more complicated? What are the challenges these technologies are bringing in?
Sure. So one side, I would say these are necessary technology or necessary points to have it from business point of view, because it is obviously addressing a lot of points from business point of view which one wanted to address, obviously. So few points in terms of efficiency improvement, cost efficiency part of it, or with respect to enriching the customer experiences. These technologies are really helping the way the businesses are kind of conducting their businesses. While we have done a kind of great, remarkable progress with respect to how the entire technology is being made to work for the use case point of view, whether it is on the business side of it in terms of operational management, or whether it is on the customer side in terms of how the customer is going to get benefited from the service point of view. Covering or combining both part of it, the fact of the matter is these are all points which one has to kind of enable within the setup, which means it is a given situation one has to look at. It is not at the cost of something, but it has to be implemented. That's how I look at it. Having said that, therefore, obviously, the question would be, how do you kind of ring fence within the risk appetite of the organization, and therefore allow certain use cases or certain points or in terms of how that particular use case is looked at, designed, implemented within the control environment, and kind of make it work for the organization. Once you see that benefit of functioning in the right way and delivering the right business objectives which was laid forward for that particular technology deployment, when you look at early offsprings of it, that's a time when one has to look at very clearly, objectively saying, now if I want to make it widespread across the customer set or maybe across the unit or across the region, how do I kind of look at that aspect? And at that point of time, how security has to be further strengthened with respect to the real controls one is to look at. In this process, two things happen. One is the business obviously gets what they need to look at from the business driver point of view. And at the same time, security teams gets a time to understand the technology, understands the business nuances, gets accumulated part of it into what business is trying to do and what kind of problem is trying to be getting resolved or addressed with respect to this technology enablement. And the third element is obviously by the time you understand what kind of controls which you need to put it from security point of view, and there are some tool solutions or maybe workaround available for you to look at and propose to the business teams, saying this is something which we need to look at, keeping in mind the business objectives and taking a kind of balanced approach between the business and the security.
Ashish, thank you once again for providing your broader view. I understand from this is, I think, even though we have a lot of complicated attacks happening every new day, the onus is also on businesses to have that kind of strategic approach when it comes to cybersecurity or developing posture. Lastly, any key recommendations or best practices from a CISO or a cybersecurity leader's perspective that you can share with us?
That's another interesting question. Thank you for putting forward this question. I think this will round up the entire discussion which we wanted to have from the perspective how one has to approach. So I would suggest and recommend strongly, there is no escape for any of the information security team or cybersecurity team members to kind of not to look at building the robust cybersecurity framework for the organization. Whether I am kind of 1 year old in cybersecurity practice or whether I have multi-year experience, it goes very clearly that the robustness one has to demonstrate at every layer from cybersecurity point of view, and therefore demonstrating the understanding about the business nuances and technical part as well as combining the security. All the three parts is something which is required for anyone and every one of us to demonstrate time and again on a daily basis. Having said that, the entire thing starts from the risk part of it. Obviously, the kind of risk which I as an individual has appetite for will be different than somebody else, right? And so is the organization. So every organization has a different understanding about the risk management and therefore the appetite to understand from the risk point of view. First and foremost, I think one is to understand that very, very clearly. And that's where you rightly pointed out, this is not just information security team or cybersecurity team has to understand, but entire business team has to understand, saying this is a risk for the organization and not for a specific function or a team. And therefore, this exercise has to be done across the board. Once we achieve that part of it, in terms of sensing, saying this is what is allowable from risk appetite point of view, which means any other thing is something which we need to look at from the mitigating part of it, establishing the right control sets, process, tool, technology, or people, or combination of it. And that is the starting point, I would say, which means you need to kind of start planning in terms of how you would like to address it, right? Second is combining that particular part from the risk assessment point of view, getting into defining and establishing the goal for yourself as an organization. Saying, I would like to do, I'm at currently at this level. I'm sure as a part of this exercise, one would understand I'm at good level, or I'm not at the desired level, and therefore I need to do 2 things, 3 things, 5 things, 10 things, 20 things to kind of raise my bar to the level which is kind of acceptable from risk appetite point of view or acceptance point of view. And once it's clear about it, then obviously define the realistic achievable goal within that time frame. So if one is to run a multi-year program for that, please put forward that part very, very clearly upfront to entire stakeholders, saying this is the journey, this is where we are, this is what needs to be achieved, and this is how it will happen over a period of time. With this, making it very, very clear that it can't happen overnight. At the same time, the team will work towards achieving the achievable goals in a desirable manners, and therefore there is a kind of continuous inputs going back to the management team, saying this is where we are at this point of time, this is what we intend to do after 3 months, 6 months and achieve, and obviously communicate at regular interval to showcase the result where you are and what is the gap, and whether we are ahead of the time or we are behind the time, and what needs to be done for that, etc., and draw attention and the right support for that. This will also ensure a kind of soft points. Typically, budgets are always constrained, and when it comes to security, people are obviously talking about saying security point of view, the budgets are not there, right? I have experience which says if you put the right conversation up front and you talk about saying this is where you are and this needs to be fixed from the business risk point of view rather than just a technical risk, the stakeholder understand that part of it and willing to participate and obviously allocate the budget for it. That's experience I can share very, very upfront, and therefore the right conversation, right understanding about it, collaborating and striking the right chord in terms of balancing out is something which is required to be done. It comes with experience and dialogue like that, but I see that very, very clearly happening in the industry as well. That brings the third aspect of it in terms of with the exercise which we have done from risk assessment point of view and the security goal point of view. The similar exercise needs to be done from technology point of view in terms of where do you stand in terms of the technology which are being used within the businesses, how good they are, whether they are kind of obsolete technology which is being used, which has its own issue with respect to not only just managing and giving the uptime and availability part of it, but also poses a lot of issues with respect to the security. Obviously, need not mention, but a very important point one has to look at is the vulnerability configuration issues which are there with respect to older legacy technology is something which attackers will always kind of look forward for it and then take advantage of it. And obviously, we as a defender, we don't want to kind of get into that situation scenario, and therefore the action to be kind of looked at from that point of view. So therefore, the third pillar from technology point of view highlights very, very clearly essential part from the technology point of view, what needs to be moved from the entire landscape point of view to the cutting edge, if I say so, and therefore move forward this point of view. Obviously, this has to be again supported from business point of view, and therefore a lot of homework has to be done by the team in terms of understanding the technology part of it, also understanding the business application delivery part of it, going maybe the detail in terms of the process which is kind of required for this application to work across the multiple functions and what is the real output one has to look at, and drive the entire thing from that point of view, from the security standpoint point of view, and try and convince the entire business management team on that side of it. But it is very important aspects to mitigate a technology risk at the end of it. The other that brings us the fourth step, which is therefore what kind of framework one is to use. One is to choose to kind of make use of the entire thing, make the communication clear, make that things clear in terms of how and whys of it. So fortunately, there are a good amount of frameworks available nowadays, which can be kind of make use of to see what are the gaps available from process technology point of view, compliance point of view, and therefore make your entire security program strengthen to that effect. To name few, NIST frameworks, ISO frameworks, standards like PCS, PCI, DSS, and of course, at least finance industry point of view, there are good amount of regulations which are available, which one is to kind of look at and get abide by. What I would advise is using this particular standards and the frameworks which is available at your disposal from team point of view. You got to look at the best one which is suitable for your business and create a kind of solid repository which is meaningful for a business to kind of adopt, keeping the business risk management, as I spoke earlier, in mind, as well as the goal which you have put forward as a part of the security goal objectives for yourself, which essentially means that there will be a kind of single program from security standpoint of view which will emerge out of these 4 steps, which is the solid rock foundation for you to speak about, saying this is how the entire program is going to run from the current level to the next level, and then ability to kind of drive through with respect to the desired level. And last one is to keep a watch on this entire program with respect to the governance, with respect to compliance. So the audits, etc., has to be looked at, the metrics has to be defined and monitored, continuously check on that part of it from GRC point of view, and ensure that this entire cycle is kind of repeated again and again. Once done, every time it has to be done. We can't just say it is done. So that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you once again, Ashish, for providing your comprehensive view on all of these key recommendations. I'm sure, like I said earlier, our viewers surely have a lot to take away from this session. But before we conclude, I also have a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Sure, yes.
Let's go ahead. The biggest trend in cybersecurity or technology that you're excited about for the future?
I think it is AI and quantum computing.
Absolutely, as predicted. But anything particular in quantum computing?
Oh, actually, obviously, the way the quantum computing is going to be evolved with respect to the superpower which one is to kind of get delivered through the systems. If it turns out to be the way it is being predicted for, the entire landscape, the way we are working, functioning right now, is going to get completely changed, and it's a massive change which we are envisaging. Right from the way encryption technology is going to work versus how it's going to deliver the entire output, I think it's kind of massive change in that. Whatever next version which we have to qualify from technology point of view is the one which is going to be get clicked in with respect to quantum computing.
Wonderful. Moving ahead, what has been one of the most rewarding moments for you in your journey for cybersecurity as well as an IT leader?
Couple of instances where the management put forward a kind of complete trust, saying you can deliver it and go get it done. That is the moment which I have cherished a couple of times. Honestly, at that point of time, I was not believing in myself, saying I can do it. A kind of one of the management person pushed me, saying yes, you can do it, and there is nothing kind of stopping you. That too at a juncture where it was kind of critical delivery point. Had it been a case of failure, it would have been kind of big fail, not only just a failure but also kind of impact to the organization from revenue point of view as well. So I think that trust instituted at that point of time, both in terms of IT management as well as cybersecurity point. I think that is something which I kind of cherish.
Fantastic. What's the most important quality in a leader that you feel is very, very relevant in today's day and age?
I think I would say 2. One is continuous learning, and second goes in hand with that is adaptability.
Absolutely. And next, if you could switch careers for a day, what would you be doing?
Probably I would have been doing some kind of business.
Traveling,
some kind of
perhaps?
business. Maybe traveling, maybe singer, that could be another one which will keep up in the list.
Great. And lastly, what's the best piece of advice that you have received till date?
There has to be purpose and there has to be impact to make that purpose fulfilled.
Awesome. I think we all can collectively take some inspiration from that.
Thank you.
Great, great. Ashish, I just want to take a moment once again to thank you for joining our platform today and being a part of this episode. While we conclude this, I definitely look forward to connecting back with you again.
Sure, it has been my pleasure. I hope whatever I could share is something which is going to be useful for the listeners. Maybe a last word from my side, a word of advice from my side. Taking right decision at the right time is very, very important in life, and especially more important in cybersecurity than anything else.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Ashish. And with that, we would be wrapping up today's session. Thank you.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Thank you so much.